The teacher's role during student-centered conversation activities. Although the teachers are not the center of attention during student-centered activities such as pair work, they still have an important role to play. In other words, the teachers don't just spend the time checking their cell phone messages. Here's what teachers do during pair or small group activities. First, they introduce the technique that students will be working on. You can see below some notes for a list of the techniques. The second, they guide students to help them see how they will carry out the pair or small group activity, perhaps modeling the first few items. Usually step 1 and 2 only take maybe 5 minutes. Then the third important step is they should be prepared to give students support in case they have questions during the activity. And then fourth, they provide individualized feedback to each student on how well they carried out the activity and used the techniques. This fourth point will be the focus of this video. In this video, I'll show you a sample of an individualized feedback form. Then I'll explain why these are so important and effective. And finally, I'll describe how you, as the teacher, can productively observe students while they are working in pairs and small groups. This is a very basic form. Sometimes students don't know what the teacher is expecting of them when they are in small groups. This form provides a very non-threatening way for the teacher to provide that information. These are effective for not only redirecting weak students, but also for giving positive reinforcement to the stronger students. It is recommended to do this after the first or second class, and then periodically after that. This feedback form is a bit more detailed, but it provides students with more specific feedback on what they are doing well and what they need to focus on in the future. This is an effective form to use after students have practiced rejoinders and follow-up questions. In my YouTube channel here, I've included videos about teaching those techniques. I'll provide a link to them below. At this point, you might be wondering, if students are in pairs, how can I hear each of them enough to give them feedback? Actually, it's quite easy. In fact, many colleagues and I have been able to do this with classes as large as 35 to 40 students. Here is how it works. Imagine that your students are all in pairs, or if there's an odd number, there may be some groups of threes. And let's say that you'd like to give each of them one of these simple feedback forms at the start of the next class or the class after that. Please notice, you are not evaluating their pronunciation or grammar. You just want to basically give them feedback on their participation. While students are in their pairs or small groups, you will slowly rotate around the periphery of the classroom, carrying a roster like this. Perhaps you are standing near Barry and Misato, but you are actually focusing on Omar and Kenji, who are not very near you. You can tell quite easily whether they are speaking in English. And you can see if one of them is not really talking much, or if one is just really doing most dominating. As you observe a pair for 20 or 30 seconds or so, you just make a code next to their names. Let's say you notice that Kenji is quiet during that time. Later, you may notice that he started to become more active, so you can update your code for him. If you have a very big class, you may want to observe them over a couple of classes during different pair work activities. When you feel confident that you'll be able to give students a fair idea about what you've observed, you can then give them a feedback form. I've given these forms to hundreds of students over my 40 years of teaching, and only 2 times has a student told me that they didn't agree with my assessment. They said that they felt they had been active even though I had marked the opposite. In both of those cases, I told them that I respected them and believed them and would change the grade. And I told them that I'd be sure to listen more closely to them during the next activity. They seemed happy with that, and I could tell that they made an extra effort during the next activities. You'll notice that on the forms, I don't include any items for pronunciation and grammar. Focusing on those is not the purpose of these activities. We want the students to develop their ability to use conversation techniques. We don't want them to hesitate to speak because of worrying about their pronunciation or grammar. Those can be worked on separately. So your job is just to watch to see if they are trying to use English and use the techniques that are the focus of the activity. However, if you notice a student is obviously causing his partner to be confused because of a pronunciation or grammar problem, you could make a note of it and add that to the feedback form. For example, a student was hard to understand because he often dropped the final consonants on words. For example, he said, "I didn't miss my homework because I was sick." He was trying to say, "I didn't finish my homework because I was sick." His partner asked him to repeat several times. I made a note of this sentence, and on his feedback form, I added this comment. I also noticed a student would switch from past to present verb tense when talking about something that he had done last summer. And this, I think, was a little bit confusing for his partner. So I just made a similar comment on his form. Another time, I had a kind of immature student who often got too excited and started talking in his native language. So I added a comment, something like this. I wrote, "I think you have the ability to speak well in English if you try." But for the most part, I rarely write extra comments because I'm not trying to listen for anything beyond the techniques. So I recommend that you try to give feedback to each student the day after the first pair or small group activity, if at all possible. That will give them a good sense of what you expect and what will help them improve their speaking skills. You'll probably see a good improvement in effort on students who got a lower grade on their first feedback form. So it's very important that you give everyone another form after a couple of days of more pair work to let them know that you have noticed their improvement. Then I usually give them feedback every once in a while. It's quite common to give everyone an A. I know that students appreciate this feedback. In fact, I've had students come up to me before class and ask, "Are we going to get those feedback forms again today?" For more discussions about teaching ESL, please visit my blog, Common Sense ESL. I'm planning to continue to add more videos about teaching ESL conversation, writing, reading, and grammar to my channel, Student-Centered Teaching ESL by David Kehe. Feel free to subscribe. See you next time.